the meaning and purpose of religion. Religion is a God spell used to garner and transfer the energy of servitude through worship or adoration. Superficial God forces are created to the believer, which in turn transfers the power even to a target that the believers would see as the enemy. By way of this God spell, a passive, mediocre subject mindset will be induced to the mind of the subject. This will eject their personal autonomy of self and ascribe it to the glory in and dependency on the external God force. The masters of this earth created God and then became the mediators for this God. It is like a divisive person who has power of attorney acting on behalf of the subject. The subject is owner, but the divisive acting individual receives the bounty of that property anyway. In the case of the God spell, the God does not desire any part of the loot or bounty, for it could be nothing but maybe a stone image of a man on a cross or a piece of wood. The most profitable God to use for this kind of sorcery is an inanimate or non-existing force. Hello again, my people. Skywalker here once more with a new brain teaser. Here I spark a little light and make it show against the background of this dark place. This is a mission to ignite the thought processes. You do not have to agree with me. Just join the debate and exercise your cranium. When you finished working out your mighty thought of the day, feel fresh, feel good, like, share, and subscribe. Never take this life too seriously, folks. Life is too serious to take seriously. If you do not have the moral authority to command the love and respect of the subject, you might compel or induce it by pitching in the name of someone else whom that person will love and trust. All you have to do is be accepted as mediator. You might say, Honorable so and so told me to ask you to trust him with so and so. The power is not in your untrustworthy name, but it is entrusted upon you for the sake of mediation. No tithe and offering ever truly goes to God, but the energy transfer of a God spell is deeper than all of this by a thousandfold. It also becomes the most important pillar in the battle for hearts, which is the main quest in the oldest war upon the earth. No other force could make those who rape, murder, and openly hate and destroy turn around and worship you. When they believe in God, it is the definer and mediator who is served by their belief, not God. When they worship God, it is the definer and mediator who is served by their worship. Even when they pay tithes and offering, all this wealth also go to the definer and mediator. The energy of their zealous servitude is given to these definers and mediators as well, and not to any god in the sky or upon any grass. George Bush could easily manipulate the zeal of Christianity to get many Christians to agree with an evil attack upon the innocent with an apologetical fortitude. The African slaves was never fond of their wicked masters. However, as soon as they were given to God, who used the master as mediator, they learned to love and be obedient to their tormentors. They also learned how horrible looking and sinful they were, and that they would do well to be like and look like their tormentors. God sent them so many subliminal and straightforward messages to that effect, and God was perfect and not to be questioned. The God told them to serve their masters who was the Lord, or who were lords. When the enslavers could not manage the battle of holding on to the slaves anymore, they decided to employ ancient techniques similar to that of Anunnaki wisdom. The Anunnaki that came to this earth, particularly through Marduk, one of their greatest warrior deemed the Lord of War, Lord of Hosts, started a system of God spell by way of superstition that worked as mightier than this word, by making even your enemies become your servant. You have to simply create the God spell, be its definer, and extract the energy of the people through it. It was a force of worship, but more like a battleship or warship in what it produced. The only way the slave masters could truly control slaves was by winning the hearts. It was a battle for hearts. It is a battle for hearts, for the human hearts. You cannot tell a person you must shackle to contain, to hold your musket until you return from a lunch break. However, you can tell the enemy to bow himself and love it, and to sacrifice to you if you own an effective God spell. Surrender and subjection by the enemy is usually proof of victory. Prostrate yourself. The God spell achieved all this without any lifting of a sword. When the slave masters decided to create a virtual reality that seemed like freedom to the slaves, they constructed a system that would keep them subject by economics. Economics is one of the four devices. Economics is one of the four devices that this world paradigm is built upon. It is one of the four corner posts or pinnacles of the earth world. You will always say the four corners of the earth. The earth world does have four winds or four corners upon which the paradigm is hinged. And borders are created to confine the population of the world to the limit of a conventional box. Superstition is one other of the four winds, and religion is the kind of superstition that draws the most traction. The slaves were forced to accept Christianity before they could receive emancipation. In the cult, they embedded the spells that would keep them to the mindset. In the cult of Christianity, the masters embedded spells that would keep the slaves to the mindset of servitude. And by the way of sociology and economics, pinnacles of the four winds, they created the servile mindsets to these slaves. The gospel was made specifically. The gospel was made specifically. The gospel was made specifically to cause the black masses to subject and bow to the image of white lads, and to never see value in their own culture and appeal. These negatives were drilled into the minds of the women that raised the children and to the men that would become their leaders. Here is an excerpt from a sermon written by the Right Reverend William Meade, Bishop of the Diocese of Virginia, to preach to slaves. Some he had made masters and mistresses for taking care of their children, and others that belonged to them. Some he had made servants and slaves to assist and work for their masters and mistresses. Others he had made ministers and teachers to instruct the rest, to show them what they ought to do, and to put them in mind of their several duties. Almighty God had been pleased to make you slaves here, and to give you nothing but labor and poverty in this world, which you are obliged to submit to, as it is His will that it should be so. Your bodies, you know, are not your own. They are at the disposal of those you belong to. This is just a fraction of the sermon, but it gets worse, trust me. This diviner of God went even as far as to tell the slaves that if they were wrongfully punished, they must accept that they deserved it, because there were other times that they did something wrong and were not caught. Once anything becomes the norm or culture, it will be accepted and enforced by even its first opposers. During the period of slavery, slaves did not like the disdain that the masters used to throw the intestines of animals to them and deny them better meat. Better meat. Yet, over a period of time, the intestine became the culture. Today, in Jamaica, there is no party without goat bellies, soup, or manish water. Something happened in the pandemic, which is the same exact thing. Some people that resisted having to wear the mask soon became the most zealous enforcers for mask wearing. and nothing had changed in their original perspective except that it was now the norm, and there was a stereotype against those who refused. There were words often repeated that were pounded into the head, creating a norm, and cultivated that mindset, creating that new norm. The hard and brutal way that Christianity was enforced in the beginning, killing many labeled as infidels to force them to believe that trauma in the DNA of the surviving members will only make them more zealous to protect the rule of Christianity. Again, it is similar to the pandemic. The trauma also helps the zealot, for fear of blasphemy, to become more zealous for enforcing its new norms. Religion is still the most powerful weapon to ever be used against the black race, and especially those that were forced into slavery. The only way to change a person in the twinkle of an eye is to give him a cult. A cult is a complete persona in the form of an intrusive, possessing demon. The enemy will choose to surrender by their own free will, by their own free will, by their own free will, and then they will serve the oppressor as gods, even if unwittingly. The definition from any dictionary or web search engine will say that religion is the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. In other words, a religion is simply a kind of superstition that surrounds a god spell. It is a belief in perceived supernatural influence or influences. Christians and religious people love to label others as superstitious. I believe that it has to do with a kind of reaction formation psychology. Whatever it is, it is. A web explanation might define superstition as a belief or practice typically resulting from ignorance, a misunderstanding of science or causality, false causal attribution, a belief in fate or magic, perceived supernatural influence, or fear of that which is unknown. People that insist that humans only existed upon this earth plane since the few thousand years are so professed by the Bible are definitely speaking as a result of ignorance. Yes, if you believe that humans only existed upon this earth plane since the few thousand years or so as professed by the Bible, you are definitely speaking as a result of ignorance. People that believe that these Adam and Eve characters were the first people, but their children went and married other people in other places, are misunderstanding science and causality, and also they are misunderstanding basic mathematical principles. To lay the foundation of truth upon a belief is superstition in itself. The Christian will openly tell you that his truth is founded on a presumption or belief. They lambast superstitious people, although religion itself was founded for that very reason, upon superstition, that you can believe and order disbelief, prescribe and compel it, even crucify or execute those that do not believe, while scoffing at any reason that seems remotely scientific. A God spell used to enforce cannot be strong if the members are not jealous about it. This is why it must be ruled by fear. When fear comes to a cult, the fastest reaction to draw from supporters is wrath. The religion is ruled by fear and wrath. Therefore, there has always to be zealous emotions, anger, retribution, jealousy, etc. When you fear someone, you fear his wrath. When you fear someone's wrath, you are threatened by those beside you that will draw his wrath towards you or your peers. The fear of God will always be necessary in a war about God's spell that is meant as a legion by which to conquer. With these emotions, the members will burn a planet down by a simple knee-jerk reaction from one definer or shepherd. Religion is faith and belief based, and religious people are believers. Therefore, religious Christians and those from other religious cults have confessed that they are superstitious organizations, while in the same breath demanding to be recognized as truth based. You cannot enforce a truth that you decide to endorse only upon the basis of faith and belief. How don't anyone get that? You cannot be a truth-based organization that does not agree with the importance of logic. Once God says so, there is no logic acceptable to correct any obvious flaw. So when God says that one man saw another man's balls, so the children of another person who was innocent was punished, no logic will be accepted by which to question or contradict. The word for logic questioning a divine order is blasphemy. Not debate, not anything else, just blasphemy. A trigger word of fear that makes it fearful to see or embrace alternative proof. So then, now that we have established, based on the Christian's own confession, and not just from Christians but from other cults, that religion is merely a form of superstition surrounding a God spell. Now, we got that out of the way. What was the purpose to create, endorse, and enforce a cult? Remember that religions massacred the most people across the ages, killing infidels and non-believers. No other cult cries foul more than Christianity, but they have directly and indirectly caused more deaths than all the world wars put together. They have directly and indirectly caused more deaths than all the world wars put together. Christianity, that is. Moreover, they were also the cause of all the world wars. Imagine that. They were also the cause of all the world wars. George Bush went to destroy with a lie that could have only been pitched on the back of Christianity, for they were zealous to go destroy infidels. And when they found that these infidels were not so guilty afterward, they did not apologize or breathe a prayer. They felt justified in God because it was God that sent them in the first place. They did nothing wrong. Christians gloat over the evil crusades and brag about how they murdered people in their own lands until they were ankle deep in blood. Some pitched higher and proclaimed that it was knee deep. The power that holds the entire black race in captivity today is that of religion, Christianity in particular. It is a battle for the hearts of men. The only way you can turn your enemies into your worshippers, as I said, is to hand them cults. A cult is a system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or object. A relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or as imposing excessive control over members. Therefore, Christianity is unquestionably a cult, and it performs human sacrifices even if it is symbolic. Why do they say that they are not a cult, but they condemn other cults? I raised the topic today because the thought struck me about these conditions in the oldest happening, the oldest war. Peace out.